Did you know that in the Philippines, love has become a currency, and for many, it's the only one they have left? Behind the sun-kissed beaches and postcard smiles, there is a market. Not for goods, not for gold, but for affection, packaged, promised, and priced. In cities lit by flickering neon and lullabied by karaoke machines, women wait, some dressed in shimmering gowns, others in plain cotton, all of them hoping. Not always for love, but for a way out. They say the Philippines is the land of hospitality, that its people are warm, welcoming, endlessly kind. And that part is true. But kindness alone does not keep the lights on, and warmth cannot always feed a family. Here, the dream of escape is stitched into the hem of every evening dress, into each polite smile cast across tables between strangers, into every message sent overseas to a man whose name she only recently learned, but whose future might become her own. And this isn't just happening in the alleyways of Manila. It's happening in the pristine island resorts too, where locals serve cocktails in silence, where tourists film sunsets but not the people who clear their plates, where a different kind of trade takes place, hidden behind beauty and brochure gloss. A story that deepens in Reality 9, where entire islands are shaped not for the people who live on them, but for the ones who will never stay. The truth is, this isn't a country begging for sympathy. It is a nation surviving against odds, against history, against the scripts written for it by others. And yet, if you look closer, you'll begin to see it. The patterns in the contrast, the heartbeat under the noise. Because what happens here isn't simple, and it's never what it first seems. They say the Philippines is a paradise, but every paradise has a price. And here, some pay it with their silence, others with their bodies, and still more, with dreams they never dared to speak out loud. 15 stories, 15 hidden truths buried beneath beaches and billboards. This isn't a vacation, and it's not a tour. This is a journey into a country that most people think they understand, but don't. A place praised for its beauty, yet rarely questioned for the cost of that beauty. Where family is sacred, but millions grow up apart. Where freedom is celebrated, but silence is often safer. Here, contradictions aren't mistakes, they're traditions. They're passed down, lived through, and worn like second skin. Smiles stretch across faces that have seen more than they'll ever say. And behind every warm welcome, there's often a quiet urgency to survive. The stories told in this video weren't found in brochures. They weren't staged or sold to a lens. They were uncovered in whispered conversations, in overlooked alleys, in the unspoken truths that linger between laughter and loss. To understand the Philippines, start by listening to its women. Because what they endure, what they survive, and what they are forced to sacrifice tells you everything. They are the pulse of the nation, and in their stories, the real Philippines begins to speak. This is a place that gives everything, its beauty, its music, its spirit. But underneath the songs and sunsets lies something far more complex. One truth leads to another, each more unexpected than the last. And it all begins where the soul of a country is quietly sold, night after night. Number 1. A country where love is for sale. Night falls fast in the city of Angeles. The sky turns charcoal before the streetlights can catch up, and neon signs begin their silent work, flickering in soft pulses above narrow streets lined with open doors. There's music, but it doesn't compete with the voices. Laughter spills out of karaoke bars like steam from a kettle, sharp, sudden, then gone. And beneath that laughter, something quieter waits. Older men, mostly foreigners, sit at plastic tables under humming lights. Their shirts are loose, their eyes scan. Young women stand nearby, some barely out of their teens, dressed for a night that promises everything and guarantees nothing. They smile, not always because they want to, but because here, smiling is part of the job. In these places, affection is a transaction. Conversations are short. Agreements are silent. The terms of engagement don't need to be spoken. They're understood. A drink first, maybe. A ride after. A promise made under the glow of a street lamp, often broken before sunrise. This isn't about judgment. This is about context. Many of these women aren't here by choice. They're here because options are few. Because back in the province, jobs are scarce and mouths still need feeding. Because a sister needs to finish school. Because a parent is ill. Because when poverty closes every door, even the darkest hallway looks like a way out. The country's colonial past isn't just written in books. It's etched into these streets. Spanish rule, American bases, Japanese invasion, each left more than monuments. They left a hierarchy. They left a fantasy, whispered from ads, reinforced by media, and sold nightly in bars with foreign music and local faces. For decades, outsiders have been taught to see the Philippines as a land of smiles, a place of exotic warmth, of loyal love, of endless gratitude. And in many ways, that's what's been exported. Through songs, through stereotypes, through mail-order dreams sealed in envelopes or sent through glowing screens. But behind every keyboard romance, behind every sweet girl in a Facebook comment thread, there's a story no one asked to hear. A story about hope, about survival, and often about sacrifice. Because what's being sold here isn't just companionship, it's escape. Some women hope for marriage, others for a visa. A few are simply hoping for tonight to pass without incident. All are navigating a space where their value is often measured by how well they pretend to enjoy it. And still, they return night after night. Not because they want to, but because this is what survival looks like in a system built to leave them behind. But this is only the surface. What happens when a country trades more than its love? Let us see what will happen to such a country when we get to number 9. Before then, there's something else hidden in plain sight, where beauty and history collide in a silence that says more than any song could. Number 2, a paradise haunted by its past. The sun cuts across the walls of Intramuros, casting long shadows on stones that once held back cannon fire. On one side, horse-drawn carriages line the cobblestone road. On the other, fast food chains buzz with customers scrolling through their phones. Children play where revolutionaries once bled. Tourists take selfies beside statues of heroes they've never read about. There's a sense of pride here, names engraved on monuments, flags flying high on government buildings. But pride often shares space with silence. Because while the Philippines celebrates its independence, reminders of occupation still linger, in language, in architecture, in memory. The Spanish came first, planting their cross in the soil and their authority in the air. They stayed for over 300 years, long enough to rename rivers, rewrite laws, and rebuild faith into something foreign. Cathedrals rose from villages. Baptisms replaced tribal rituals. But underneath the bells and Latin hymns, the native tongue was forced to whisper. It still does in many corners of the country. Then came the Americans, with schools, cinema, democracy, and with them a different kind of control. English was introduced, not as an option, but as a standard. Today it's spoken fluently by millions. Job interviews are held in it, TV anchors use it, even beauty pageant answers are practiced in it. But what happens to identity when one's own language is never good enough for success? The war came next. The Japanese occupation left deep scars, in basements, in books, in families. Buildings were flattened, cities burned, bodies left in ditches. The memories aren't discussed openly, but they live on in glances exchanged by grandparents and in war museums visited on school field trips. Manila became one of the most destroyed Allied cities during World War II, second only to Warsaw, and yet barely a trace of that devastation remains in the skyline. It's been rebuilt, rebranded, repackaged. But look closely. A colonial church stands just meters from a Starbucks. Behind the altar, a crypt holds the bones of revolutionaries and friars, opposites in life, united in death. History books talk about heroes, but skip entire villages wiped out by gunboats. Independence is celebrated each year with parades and slogans. Yet economic chains remain, thinner but still tight. Foreign corporations dominate much of the economy. Outsourcing feeds families, but it also feeds dependency. Filipinos answer phones for companies they will never own. They work abroad, care for children they didn't raise, clean homes they will never live in, while their own families wait for video calls and remittances. The illusion of sovereignty is powerful. National pride runs deep. But beneath the national anthem, sung loud in schools across the islands, is an unspoken question. If freedom was won, why does the country still live by the terms of others? The answer lies in the unacknowledged cost of colonization. Not just the land taken, but the stories rewritten, the dreams redirected, the very idea of what it means to succeed reframed through someone else's lens. They gained freedom, but lost something else, and no one talks about it. Just outside the capital, in a rising skyline of glass and steel, that silence becomes even harder to ignore. Because in the shadows of luxury, another kind of contrast begins to emerge, one where comfort and desperation live side by side, separated only by a wall. Number 3, the slum next to the Sky Tower. At the heart of Metro Manila, a glass tower rises above the city like a beacon. Below, its polished lobby hums with cold air and quiet music. Security guards greet office workers in pressed shirts. Cafes open with espresso machines hissing steam. Elevators glide up dozens of floors without sound. Outside the glass, however, the soundtrack is different. Just across a narrow river, brown with waste and lined with scrap, life begins in another rhythm. Tin roofs clatter in the wind. Bare feet slap against muddy walkways. Children crouch by open drains, scooping water to rinse plastic wrappers. Their laughter competes with the groan of old jeepneys and the clang of steel pots. Here, the air smells of rice, oil, and smoke. Power lines hang low, tangled like forgotten promises. From Bonifacio Global City to the streets of West Rembo, the distance is less than 2 kilometers. But in those 2 kilometers, life expectancy drops by decades. A child born on one side of the road will likely study abroad. A child born on the other might never finish high school. In one tower, meetings decide stock portfolios. In the alley below, families gather coins just to buy cooking gas. The inequality isn't hidden, it's vertical. At night, lights from luxury apartments reflect in puddles next to makeshift homes. Mothers cook dinner beside construction fences for buildings they help build. Teenagers with cracked cell phones scroll through photos of food they'll never taste. In restaurants they pass by every day. Many work as security guards, janitors, or delivery riders in the very buildings that won't let them enter through the front door. A tricycle driver waits outside a shopping mall. He's lived in the same neighborhood all his life, but has never stepped inside the mall's cinema. He's never tasted the imported coffee sold upstairs, never ridden the elevator, never seen the gym on the top floor. And yet, every morning, he takes passengers who do. In Makati and Taguig, high-rise condos now cast long shadows over informal settlements. One block is worth billions, the next is worth eviction. The skyline keeps growing, but the spaces for the poor shrink with each development plan. Inside these slums, people don't count time in hours. They count it in unpaid bills, in hours of brownout, in liters of clean water fetched from the neighbor's pipe. Here, a flood doesn't just mean inconvenience. It means sleeping on wet plywood, losing school books, or missing meals. During elections, the promises flow freely. Paved roads, clean water, affordable housing. But after the votes are cast, the garbage trucks return, not to collect trash, but to clear homes marked illegal. Construction begins again. Steel rises, glass follows. And the people watch from across a fence, carrying their belongings in plastic sacks, walking toward nowhere once more. The most expensive strip of land in the country sits a few blocks away from where a child has never touched a computer. This is not a city of the future. It's 2 cities pretending to be one. One stacked in luxury, the other sinking in neglect. But if you think the gap is wide here, wait till you see who really owns the land. Because sometimes power doesn't live in towers. It hides in silence, in old contracts, and in names you won't find on any street sign. Number 4, living with disaster every day. In the village of San Roque, the house is made of wood and rusted tin. No windows, just holes. The floor is raised on bamboo stilts, 2 feet above the ground. It used to be 3, but the floods have changed the soil, softened it, lowered it. Outside, the ocean isn't far. It never is. The sky looks harmless, but locals know better. They've seen storms arrive before the warnings. They've watched the sea swallow streets in less than an hour. Every year, more than 20 typhoons pass through the Philippines. Some crash through the islands with full force. Others graze past, still strong enough to flatten a roof or turn a road into a river. The people prepare not by stocking shelves, but by remembering what was lost the last time. Across the archipelago, evacuation is a skill passed down like a recipe. Mothers teach their children which documents to grab. Grandparents sleep beside packed bags. School gyms double as shelters, lined with straw mats, crying infants, and donated rice. But the real weight isn't in the water or the wind. It's in the waiting. The hours spent unsure if a roof will hold. The silence between gusts. The moment when a wall begins to creak and there's no more time to wonder. In Leyte, where Typhoon Haiyan made landfall in 2013, the scars are permanent. Over 6,000 were lost. Whole communities erased in a single afternoon. The names are still spoken, but quietly, as if loud remembrance might bring the storm back. And yet, the rebuilding begins almost immediately. Hammer by hammer, nail by nail. A fisherman near Tacloban has rebuilt his home 5 times. Each time with cheaper material, each time with more urgency. He doesn't call it hope, he calls it necessity. The resilience of the Filipino spirit is often admired, but admiration does not replace infrastructure. It doesn't stop floods. It doesn't cool the rising heat. And it doesn't lift the weight of rebuilding the same life over and over again from the same pile of wet wood and broken memories. Children walk to school on roads made slippery by landslides. Churches host Sunday Mass under tents when roofs are torn away. Volunteers deliver bottled water by boat because the bridge is gone again. In Bicol, the ground shakes from time to time. Not enough to cause panic, just enough to remind everyone that the fault lines are still there, quiet but alive. And in Batangas, steam still rises from the mouth of Taal volcano, even on the calmest morning. This is life in the Philippines. Beautiful but fragile, brave but exhausted, and always just one storm away from starting over. But if nature challenges the body, what happens when something challenges the future before it even begins? What if the next storm doesn't tear down homes, but childhood itself? Number 5, children who work like adults. Under the yellow flicker of a broken street lamp, a child moves between car windows with a bundle of white flowers in her hand. The scent of sampaguita drifts upward with each tap on the glass. She's no taller than the side mirror. Her eyes look older than they should. It's past midnight. At a major intersection in Quezon City, the traffic never sleeps. Nor do the children. Some sell rags, some juggle. Some simply knock, silently holding out a plastic cup. Drivers look forward. Windows stay closed. But when the light turns red, these kids race the seconds. Because every moment is a chance to make enough for a meal, or miss it entirely. Across the country, childhood doesn't always mean school bags and playtime. For thousands, it means hustle. It means survival. In the early morning, just before the boats return to the breakwater in Manila Bay, boys line the edge of the pier, their feet gripping algae-covered rocks. Some are shirtless. Some wear rubber sandals with missing straps. One by one, they leap into the water, heads disappearing below the surface. When they emerge, they hold coins, tossed by tourists or passers-by, sinking fast beneath oil-streaked waves. They call it swimming, but there's no laughter here. Just coughing, cold skin, and the quiet urgency of who gets the most. In a shanty town behind the old train tracks of Caloocan, there's an 11-year-old boy who carries a sack nearly his size. It drags behind him, filled with plastic bottles and aluminum scraps. He has no school uniform, no school ID, no birth certificate. In the eyes of the system, he doesn't exist. He doesn't ask why he doesn't go to school. He knows the answer. His mother makes 100 pesos a day cleaning laundry. Rent takes half, food takes the rest. Education costs more than anyone says. There are no toys in his room, no books, no drawings taped to the wall, just a mattress, a cracked radio, and silence. But he knows things most children don't. How to sort copper from metal, which dumpsters have fresher leftovers, how to tell if a tricycle driver will pay for wiped headlights or speed off before handing a coin. These are the lessons of the street, and they're taught young. In the slums, children understand hierarchy early. Older boys guard territories. Girls are warned to walk home in groups. Nightfall is a boundary, not just in time but in risk. Yet somehow, amidst it all, some of these children still carry a grin. They still chase kites made of plastic and string. They still cheer when someone scores a point in a game drawn out with chalk. But behind every smile is a question no one wants to ask. What kind of future waits for a child who has never been allowed to be one? And for those who've never seen another life, what becomes of the idea of dreaming? Just a few miles from these streets, the advertisements shine brightly on digital billboards. Perfect faces, glowing skin, promises of beauty and approval. But in a nation where so many children fade into the background, who gets to be seen and who is told they must change just to matter? Number 6, a nation addicted to beauty. In the cosmetics aisle of a Manila drugstore, one section takes up nearly half the shelf space. Not lipstick, not mascara, whitening. Bottles and tubes labeled with words like glow, radiant, clear, refined. Most don't mention it outright, but everyone understands what they're selling. Lighter skin. The Philippines has one of the largest skin lightening markets in Southeast Asia, from lotions to soaps, pills to injections. Products promise to correct what's been there since birth. Billboards feature fair-skinned models with brown eyes and dyed hair. Magazine covers rarely show anything darker than beige. In primetime television, the leading characters are almost always mestiza, those with mixed ancestry, typically with Spanish or American bloodlines. Their skin is light, their nose is sharp, their accents slightly foreign. But this isn't just about fashion, it's history, layered over generations. Centuries of colonization left a silent message. Power looked different. Spanish officials ruled with pale skin under parasols. American teachers brought textbooks, rules, and a new standard of clean beauty. Japanese soldiers arrived with fear and control. Each wave left behind more than buildings. They rewrote beauty. Today, the effect is visible not only in what's sold, but in what's taught. Children learn early which features are admired. In school plays, the princess is rarely dark-skinned. In malls, whitening clinics are advertised between restaurants. Even in job interviews, applicants are told, without hesitation, that morena skin might hurt their chances. In some barangays, posters for local pageants feature rows of contestants. Almost all have been filtered beyond recognition. Skin smoothened, noses narrowed, eyes brightened. Young girls scroll through social media using apps that alter their appearance automatically. It's less about vanity and more about expectation. This is the look that gets likes. This is the face that feels safe. Surgeries have increased, some subtle, some irreversible. Nose lifts, chin reshaping, eyelid work. The procedures are often financed through long-term loans or ORW remittances. But the results are rarely questioned, because in a culture where approval is currency, transformation can feel like survival. The word morena, once a badge of identity, is now used as a contrast, a warning, a subtle insult. Comments like, "You'd be so pretty if only you were lighter," are said casually. Repeated enough, they stick. And the damage is not just personal, it's cultural. It erases the diversity of the islands. It reshapes how people see themselves. It tells a young girl from Mindanao that her reflection is a problem to fix, not a story to honor. But beauty here is also performance. On television variety shows, dancers wear the same shade of foundation. Contestants sing with edited backdrops, choreographed down to every smile. And behind every spotlight, there's a mirror reflecting what the country thinks it wants to be. The question remains, when so many are altering how they look just to be seen, what happens to those who refuse? Or worse, those who can't afford to change? And if beauty becomes a mask, what does that mean for those forced to perform every single day just to survive? Number 7, the show must go on. In a brightly lit studio in Quezon City, music blasts through the speakers as studio lights sweep over the crowd. Camera operators move quickly between contestants waving nervously and hosts bouncing with rehearsed charm. Behind them, LED screens flicker with color. The audience laughs, claps, cheers, on cue. This is no ordinary show, it's a national routine. Lunchtime variety programs aren't just entertainment in the Philippines. They're ritual. For many, they are the soundtrack of the afternoon. They bring joy, but behind the laughter, something else hums underneath. Almost every Filipino family knows someone who has performed If not on television, then in barangay contests, school talent shows, karaoke bars, cruise ships. Talent is currency. If you can sing, dance, act, make people laugh, you might find a way out. But often it starts not with a dream, but a need. On the outskirts of Davao, a young woman practices dance routines with a cracked mirror propped against a tree. Her slippers are worn flat. The sound system is a borrowed phone. She hopes to qualify for a televised contest that promises a small prize and, more importantly, a moment to be seen. She's not alone. Hundreds line up each week, some sleeping overnight on pavement just for an audition. For others, the performance never ends. Overseas Filipino workers, especially in the Middle East and on luxury liners, are applauded for more than hard work. They are expected to sing, to smile, to entertain. Maids with microphones at embassy events, nurses organizing cultural nights in hospital cafeterias, bartenders dancing behind counters to the beat of a foreign DJ. It's unspoken but understood. Your job is more than labor, it's spirit, and spirit must always be cheerful. In a birthday party in Makati, a clown juggles while children scream with excitement. Balloons burst, parents take photos. His wig is crooked, his costume patched, but his smile doesn't waver. Later, he packs up slowly, folding the tablecloth, placing the plastic props into a single torn bag. He doesn't speak much, but his story floats quietly in the air. A few months ago, he buried his youngest son, an illness caught too late. He took only one day off. The next morning, he painted his face and went back to work. Because here, the show must go on. This is a country where hardship doesn't stop the music. It amplifies it. Filipinos sing during storms, they dance during blackouts, they memorize lyrics before they can read. In jeepneys, in churches, in evacuation centers, there is always a melody. But what happens when the need to perform replaces the space to grieve? When applause becomes armor? And when an entire nation feels the pressure to smile through pain? Who listens to the silence behind the joke? Number 8, the silence of the press. In a quiet radio booth in Mindanao, the mic light glows red. The voice that fills the room is calm, measured, and low, careful. Outside the soundproof glass, the street buzzes with motorcycles and distant traffic, unaware of the risk echoing between every word spoken on air. The host doesn't name names anymore, not after what happened to the last anchor. Across the Philippines, press freedom once stood as a point of pride. The country had one of the liveliest media scenes in Southeast Asia. Dozens of regional outlets, unfiltered headlines, loud opinion pieces. But in recent years, that voice has begun to crack. Journalists now learn to write between the lines. Those who don't vanish from the page altogether. Officially, freedom of speech still exists, but unofficially, there are rules, unspoken ones. Step too far into political corruption, military misconduct, or land disputes, and the silence that follows isn't figurative. It's enforced, sometimes with lawsuits, other times bullets. Local newspapers once delivered headlines that sparked conversation. Today, many have folded, their staff either laid off or forced to shift gears. Some now manage social media accounts. Others stream game content to pay rent. A few try to keep reporting, but wear helmets to interviews. Helmets in their own towns. And as the watchdogs go quiet, something else grows louder. Vlogs, influencers fill the vacuum left behind. With ring lights and soft filters, they talk about current events like lifestyle tips. Fact-checking disappears behind hashtags. Viral stories are rarely true, but often effective. Entertainment blurs with commentary, and audiences, already tired and skeptical, find comfort in content that never asks too many questions. The danger isn't just what's said, it's what gets ignored. An illegal landfill behind a tourist resort, a logging permit approved after midnight, a police operation with no documentation. If no one covers it, did it happen? In one province, a respected journalist found her tires slashed 3 times in a single month. Then her window shattered. Then her radio segment canceled. No formal complaint was filed. She now runs a bakery. In another city, a student reporter was offered a scholarship to stop writing about a mayor's campaign funding. The offer came in cash, inside an envelope with no name. These aren't isolated events. They're patterns. The country ranks among the most dangerous places in the world for media workers, not because of open war, but because of quiet consequences. And yet, the press continues, in whispers, in anonymous blogs, in back alley zines passed between students, in encrypted group chats that ask the right questions when the microphones go off. But silence takes many forms. Sometimes it's threats, other times it's distraction. The story that should matter buried beneath a viral dance challenge or a tourism ad showing blue waves and empty sands. So the question grows louder. If the voice of truth is removed from the room, who's left to speak for the people still inside? And what happens when paradise becomes the perfect place to hide a secret? Number 9. Selling the island fantasy. On the shores of Boracay, the water gleams as if polished. Waves stretch thin over white sand, curling in rhythm beneath the distant beat of party music and camera clicks. Palms sway in rehearsed motion. Tourists drink coconut water from souvenir shells and take photos with women in flowered skirts. They laugh, unaware that the song playing on the speaker is not in the local dialect. It's imported, just like the fantasy they've come to buy. This is paradise, packaged, filtered, and priced by the hour. For decades, the Philippines has sold itself to the world through postcards and promos. The Pearl of the Orient Seas, an escape for those from colder continents. Smiling faces, untouched beaches, cheap massages, and sunsets ready for Instagram. But hidden beneath the tourism posters is another story. It begins with land. Land once walked by ancestors, now leveled for parking lots and beachfront villas. In Palawan, a resort wall cuts off a fishing village from the sea. The village has existed longer than the fence, but the legal document says otherwise. In Bohol, an indigenous group petitions to stop construction near a sacred cave, only to be told the paperwork is final. In Siargao, locals used to surf at sunrise. Now, security guards block access until the foreigners are done. There are places where even the locals must pay to enter their own coastline, where their names aren't on the brochures, but their hands clean the pool before guests arrive. And in the middle of it all, she stands, the same woman from before, the one who once believed that love would save her from poverty, that the foreign man who visited her city was the answer. She waited, she trusted, she gave more than she had, and when he left, so did her options. Now she greets tourists with a practiced grin outside a luxury bar. Her name tag reads Isla, but that's not her name. It's what the manager said would be easier for guests to pronounce. She holds a tray of cocktails, wears a bright sash, leads snorkeling tours she's never taken herself. At night, she folds towels shaped like swans. In the morning, she sings happy birthday in 3 languages to guests who tip in coins and compliments. They call her exotic, hospitable, fun, but never ask her how she got here. They don't see the dormitory where she sleeps with 7 others, or the contract that forbids her from complaining online, or the clause that says pregnancy means termination. They just see the island girl, always smiling, always available, always temporary. And still, she hopes. Because what else is left when your home becomes a brand? When your language is reduced to a slogan? When your face is just part of the fantasy? Tourism was meant to bring opportunity, and in some places it has. But too often it replaces culture with convenience. It turns heritage into performance, and people into props. Even the festivals, once sacred rites, now scheduled to match flight calendars. A country known for its beauty becomes trapped by it, and the question lingers, what happens when a nation becomes addicted to the gaze of outsiders? What does it mean to be known only when you're entertaining? The answer lies deeper inland, where the forest still breathes and old songs echo between trees. But for how much longer? Number 10. The forests that cry. In the northern mountains of Luzon, the air thins and silence grows thicker than fog. Green stretches across the horizon, but not all of it is alive. Some of it is planted in neat artificial rows. Some of it has been shaved into scarred brown patches that bleed red with erosion every time it rains. And beneath those trees, there used to be people. This is where the forest speaks, or rather, where it used to. The Ayeta, Dumagat, and Luma tribes once knew the rhythm of the land like a heartbeat. They didn't build monuments. They passed down chants, stories, and rituals. Some could name a tree by touching its bark. Others could hear the shift in birdsong before a storm. But today, much of that knowledge is disappearing because the forest they learned from is vanishing. Along the mountains of Zambales, bulldozers groan louder than drums. In Palawan, the smell of diesel hangs where herbs once grew wild. Logging roads carve through sacred hills. And every year, a little more is taken. The official term is development. On paper, it's progress, mining, plantations, roads. But ask the communities who've been moved, and the story shifts. In Bukidnon, a school once sat beneath a banyan tree where children learned to read and elders sang lullabies in Banukid. Today, only the concrete steps remain. The rest was cleared for a pineapple farm exporting fruit to foreign supermarkets. The elders have stopped singing, not out of protest, but because there are no longer children who understand the words. In Mindoro, a young Mangyan girl carries her sibling through a relocation site where plastic roofs flap in the wind. Her family was moved from their ancestral forest when a nickel mine expanded. The mountain her grandfather called home is now stripped bare, its veins exposed for trucks to haul away. She was told this was temporary, that they could return, but no one comes back to a mountain that's been emptied. Then there's the boy. He sits on a log outside a concrete school built beside the mining site. His name is Elias. He's never seen the mountain his mother speaks of, with tears in her eyes. He only knows it through a song she hums before sleep. A lullaby passed down through generations, now soft, fading. That mountain was once sacred ground. Rituals were held there every harvest. Now it's a pit, ringed by fences and warning signs. Elias stares at a photo of it in a book. For him, the sacred is something you look at, not something you touch. And this is the shift, when a culture becomes something studied rather than lived. Across the archipelago, ancestral domains are being reduced to percentages. There's talk of integration and modernization, but the cost is memory, identity, spirit. Ancient chants are disappearing, not because they're forgotten, but because their singers no longer have a place to sing. When the trees fall, it's not just nature that's lost. It's entire lineages of knowledge, songs that kept time before clocks. Healing that came from roots, not prescriptions. Justice that was spoken around fire, not in courtrooms. The forest doesn't just hold carbon, it holds everything a people are. But there's a question that lingers like smoke after a slash-and-burn harvest. How do you mourn something that never died, but was erased? And if the forests are fading, what happens to faith? Number 11, faith, fear, and firearms. In the Philippines, faith is everywhere. It's etched into calendars, carved into wood above doorways, printed on jeepneys beside slogans like, "God bless this ride." Streets are renamed after saints. Towns come to a halt during processions. Statues of the Virgin Mary stand tall, even in floodwaters. And yet, beneath this fierce devotion, there lies a contradiction too vast to ignore. This is one of the most devout Catholic countries in the world. Over 80% identify with the church. Masses overflow onto streets. People kneel on concrete in the rain, reciting novenas with trembling lips. But walk a few meters beyond the parish gate, and a different scene unfolds. Next to the chapel is a cockfighting arena. Crowds gather, loud, frantic, fists full of betting slips. The same hands that press against the crucifix in prayer now clench in gambling. And across the street, another contradiction waits. A man in a shirt bearing the Sacred Heart, polishing his firearm. In rural areas, people pray before traveling through checkpoints. They recite rosaries in tricycles while passing armed militias. They ask saints for safety, but carry pistols in their waistbands. Here, faith doesn't replace fear. It sits beside it. In some homes, altars glow with candles, flowers, and handwritten prayers. But in the same room, young people hide who they are. LGBTQ+ youth, especially in deeply religious families, are often taught that God is love, but only if they change. That their identity is a phase, a sin to confess. In confession boxes across the country, priests hear whispered secrets from teenagers begging to be made normal. They leave absolved, but not accepted. And still, not all faith turns its back. In Quezon City, a humble shelter operates in the shadow of a massive cathedral. It's quiet. No crosses on the walls, no sermons, just bunk beds, clean clothes, and silence that doesn't judge. The man behind it wears a collar. A priest. He doesn't advertise his work, doesn't preach, he just listens. He's taken in boys kicked out for wearing lipstick, girls beaten for holding hands, teens who spent nights in parks with nowhere to go after their families prayed the gay away. Here, he says, he's still doing God's work, but without the stage. This contradiction doesn't exist in headlines. It exists in kitchens, in bedrooms, in school uniforms and secret diaries. It's in the boy who leads church choir but deletes his dating apps before Sunday. In the girl who wears a scapular over a chest binder. What happens when the same institution that teaches mercy becomes the reason someone feels unforgivable? How do people reconcile the love they're taught to believe in with the rejection they're forced to endure? The answer is not simple, but it begins here, in the tension between prayer and pain, between tradition and truth. And still, people keep kneeling, lighting candles, whispering prayers, even when the pews feel colder than they used to. But if faith can silence identity, what else can it protect itself from? Keep watching, because in the next story, it isn't just beliefs that repeat. It's power, generation after generation. Number 12, democracy or dynasty. In the Philippines, Election Day is not a quiet event. It's spectacle, noise, faces printed on banners, arms raised in rehearsed gestures, jingles echoing through barangay halls and barangay streets. People gather in plastic chairs under tarps, waving fans in the heat while listening to promises they've heard before. Not just last election, but decades ago. The names changed slightly, an added junior here, a hyphenated surname there. But the faces stay familiar. Sons of mayors, daughters of senators, widows stepping in for husbands shot during campaigns, cousins sliding into vacated council seats. It's a choreography passed down through bloodlines, where the ballot becomes less a choice and more a ritual. In one rural barangay in Luzon, a mayor's son is running for captain. His poster shows him shaking hands with farmers, even though he's lived most of his life in the city. The incumbent, an older woman with no budget, distributes handwritten leaflets and borrows a megaphone. Her supporters are mostly neighbors. His arrive in air-conditioned vans. On election day, rice sacks are quietly distributed in alleys. Phone loads are sent out. The people receiving them don't speak openly, but they know the exchange. Vote for this, eat for a week. And yet, despite the imbalance, people show up. Long lines form before dawn. Voters carry umbrellas and toddlers in faith. Because for many, voting still feels sacred, even if the system doesn't. In Mindanao, a telenovela-style campaign plays out on local radio. A candidate accuses his rival of infidelity, corruption, and betrayal. The rival responds with verses from scripture. Their feud plays out like entertainment, but the decisions they make on roads, hospitals, water, shape thousands of lives. Across the archipelago, more than 70% of Congress is controlled by political dynasties. In some provinces, 3 generations rule simultaneously, one in the Senate, one in the governor's seat, one in the local youth council. Voters recognize the pattern, but changing it? That's harder than it sounds, because in places where roads are unpaved and schools are underfunded, loyalty is often exchanged for survival. He built this bridge, a woman says, pointing at cracked concrete. So we'll vote for his son. That bridge may have cost 10 times more than it should have, but without it, they were cut off. And yet, under the noise, there are murmurs of change. In a mountain town, a school teacher runs against a 4-term incumbent. She has no campaign truck, no slogans, no money. But she visits homes, talks to mothers, brings books to students. On election night, her name surprises even the officials counting. But one victory doesn't undo a dynasty. It rattles it, slightly. So the question remains, in a democracy where the same hands keep signing the papers, what does real power look like? And if people grow sick, not just of corruption, but literally, where do they go? What happens when the system they vote for can't even keep them alive? Number 13, the price of getting sick. Outside a government hospital in Quezon City, A line begins to form before the sun rises. Mothers holding children, elderly men gripping walking sticks, a teenager with gauze around his jaw, staring at the concrete. Some traveled from provinces overnight, with plastic bags packed as if for a weekend trip, except they're not here to visit. They're here to beg for space. Inside, the scene tightens. Metal beds packed side by side. Others share mattresses on the floor, marked by tape like parking slots. Ceiling fans turn slowly, barely denting the heat. Nurses walk quickly, but they're outnumbered. In the hallway, a woman wipes sweat from her child's forehead with a face towel. Her son has dengue. She's been here for 3 days, waiting for a room. He's been vomiting into a plastic bag. There's nowhere else to go. Healthcare is free on paper, but in practice, it's a calculation. A father sells his motorbike to afford insulin. A family pawns their farmland after a biopsy. In provinces, families whisper the same phrase over and over again. We'll just try to keep them comfortable. Because chemotherapy is too expensive. Because ICU means selling a house. Because saving a life means losing everything else. In the same country, in the same city, a different kind of hospital exists. White walls, soft music, concierge service. A woman from Singapore lands in Manila for dental surgery. A man from the Middle East checks in for hair implants. A Western couple smiles through spa windows during a healing retreat. They're medical tourists. For them, this country is affordable, efficient, private. For locals, it's a maze of referrals, signatures, and waiting lists. Outside the emergency room in Davao, a tricycle driver collapses. He's brought in, but there's no oxygen. His wife offers jewelry to speed things up. The staff don't look at her hand. They're already moving on to the next case. Charity wards rely on donations. Some patients buy their own needles. Relatives queue at pharmacies for gauze and antibiotics. An orderly carries a child past a blood-stained sheet, quietly, carefully. Some doctors do what they can. They work overtime. They go unpaid. A young intern sleeps beside the lab freezer. Her shoes are worn through. She hasn't seen her parents in months. Still, she stays. Because if she leaves, who's left? Healthcare here isn't just a crisis. It's a mirror. It shows who can afford to heal and who can't even afford the diagnosis. One country, two realities. And when hope fades in the hallway of a hospital, some look for hope beyond the sea. They start to pack, not for treatment, but for opportunity. And the next stop, it's not just a destination, it's a departure. Number 14, a nation that leaves to live. At Ninoy Aquino International Airport, departures aren't just routine, they are rituals. Before sunrise, a crowd gathers at the glass divider, where families press their hands to the glass as if trying to hold on through a barrier they can't cross. Inside the terminal, the air smells of luggage wheels, anticipation, and held-back tears. It's not just a place of transit, it's a portal of sacrifice. Over 12 million Filipinos now live and work abroad. Every hour, over 2,000 leave the country to serve in hospitals, shipyards, construction sites, hotels, factories, kitchens. Some leave by choice, most by necessity. One of them is a nurse. Her flight to Canada is called, but she lingers. Her husband and daughter wave from the railing, faces stretched by worry and pride. She's been waiting for this job for 3 years. But as the gate opens, her shoulders drop. She mouths a silent apology to her child. This isn't a vacation. She won't be back for Christmas. The Overseas Filipino Worker, OFW, is a title worn like armor. But behind it are broken families, birthday candles blown out through video calls, parents watching their children grow up from hotel rooms across the world. Remittance money keeps the country afloat. Billions sent home every year, new homes built, siblings sent to school, groceries paid for. But what's left behind can't be measured in pesos. In Iloilo, a father works on a cargo ship. His son doesn't recognize him when he returns after 2 years. In Riyadh, a domestic worker sleeps in a kitchen after 18-hour shifts. In Tokyo, a caregiver eats dinner alone, scrolling through photos of her nephews. Faces she hasn't touched since they were babies. Brain drain is a national wound hidden beneath economic numbers. Engineers become dishwashers. Teachers serve coffee. Surgeons retrain as caregivers. The best minds leave, and what remains are vacancies too deep to fill. Some OFWs never return. Some do, but not as they left. A casket arrives on a cargo flight. The family meets it with flowers and silence. She was a helper in Kuwait. No one knows what happened. But she's home now, in a box wrapped with customs tape. In the province, a girl draws a map. On it, she writes, Canada, Italy, Dubai, Guam. Her mother's in one of those places. She doesn't remember which. And yet, there is something unspoken in every departure. A hope tucked between boarding passes and passport stamps. The belief that maybe, if they leave, those they love can stay. But what happens to a country when its strongest shoulders are always walking away? The answer might lie not in who leaves, but in who stays behind. Number 15, the people who keep smiling. In a flooded street in Tondo, knee-deep in muddy water, a woman grills bananas on a floating bamboo tray. A makeshift raft tied to a lamppost serves as both her kitchen and counter. As the rain lashes the rooftops and thunder rolls in the distance, she laughs, offering a hot snack to children who are paddling past in plastic tubs. This is where joy is improvised. The Philippines faces more than 20 typhoons a year. Streets collapse, power lines snap, roofs disappear. Yet on these streets, where puddles stretch into lakes, vendors still call out their wares. Jeepney drivers still decorate their dashboards with bobbleheads and disco lights. Fishermen still sing as they mend torn nets in the shadows of storm clouds. In a province hit by back-to-back storms, a basketball court turns into a shelter. No walls, just tarps. A pot of rice boils over wood fire as neighbors share what's left of their supplies. No one has much, but everyone gives something. Children play on a bridge split by an earthquake. Rebar sticks out like thorns, but they hop from beam to beam with the ease of acrobats. They aren't reckless, they're resilient. They've learned to balance joy on unstable ground. In a barangay cut off by floods, men carry sacks of rice across fallen coconut trees. One slips, drops the bag, then laughs so loudly it echoes over the water. An old woman, standing waist-deep in the current, chuckles and shouts a teasing remark from her window. The moment looks like comedy, but it's courage, dressed in humor. There's a word for this, bayanihan. It means more than helping. It's the instinct to lift, to share weight, to move forward, together. When a fire gutted a slum in Quezon City, hundreds were displaced overnight. But by morning they had built rows of tents from scrap. Neighbors passed clothes, water, prayers, without being asked. The act of surviving became a group project. On stage in a barangay fiesta, a drag queen dances barefoot on a cracked basketball court. The speakers buzz. The crowd cheers. Somewhere in that crowd, a boy with no lunch money laughs for the first time in days. There's a Filipino saying, "Bahala na." Whatever happens, happens. But it's not about surrender. It's about charging forward, even when you're unsure what's ahead. Not because you expect things to be easy, but because standing still isn't an option. It's why smiles appear where statistics say they shouldn't. It's why karaoke machines survive floods. Why birthday cakes are baked in borrowed ovens. Why kids chase each other through ash-covered fields days after a volcano erupted. Why someone always finds a way to dance, even when the music has stopped. This is what they don't put in tourism ads. Not beaches or bars, but people who smile with nothing in their pockets and everything on their shoulders. Because here, joy is not a luxury. It's a form of resistance. And sometimes the most unexpected thing you'll see on the hardest day is a stranger reaching out a hand and saying, "Kain tayo." Let's eat. The world looks at poverty and sees sadness. But look closer, and you'll see something else. A community that rebuilds before the rescue teams arrive. Children sharing umbrellas too small to cover their shoulders. Vendors handing out extra change when they know you have none. A song playing on a crackling speaker. A dance starting on a muddy street. This is what they never show you. The smile that survives the storm. You thought this was a travel documentary, but really it was a love letter and a warning. A story of what a nation gives, what it loses, and what it never surrenders. From laughter echoing through broken alleys, to prayers whispered beside eviction notices. From borrowed dreams worn as uniforms, to smiles that outlast the storm. The Philippines isn't just a postcard, It's a contradiction. A place where the strongest bridges are made of people, where hope holds on even when everything else lets go, where truth hides behind welcome signs and struggle wears makeup. And yet, despite all of it, somehow the spirit stands taller than the skyline. So maybe this wasn't just a story about a country. Maybe it was a question. If beauty can hide pain, then what else have we missed? Just because we didn't know where to look. And in the quiet that follows, maybe the world is ready to hear what you saw.